Hello everyone! On behalf of Rainbow Loom, this is Angeline, formerly known as TutorialsByA here on YouTube. Today I'm so excited to be showing you how to create this diamond stripe bracelet on the BFF Maker. The BFF Maker is a new on-the-go bracelet maker by Rainbow Loom, and I've been having so much fun creating all of these friendship bracelets with it. If you're a beginner to making friendship bracelets, especially on the BFF Maker, today I'll be walking you through all the steps that you'll need to know in order to use this super fun tool. So if you've never made a friendship bracelet before or followed a friendship bracelet pattern, you are in the right place. This is a comprehensive video, so if you are a little bit more of a seasoned bracelet maker, you can go ahead and skip through the chapters to where we start making this bracelet if you'd like to skip through the detailed beginner instructions. For supplies today, of course you'll need your BFF maker. I have my suction cup attached to mine here today because I'm working at my craft table, which is made of glass, so I apologize in advance if you see any glare or residue from paint or glue in my previous art projects that I've done here. Additionally, you'll need 2 skeins of thread in 2 different colors, as well as an S-Clasp if you'd like to make your bracelet removable. And lastly, I love to have my instruction booklet handy whenever I'm making a bracelet, just so I can refer back to it while I'm making my design, as well as use this ruler here before I start my project so that way I can cut my thread appropriately. For all the bracelets you'll be creating with your BFF Maker kit, it's recommended to use 36 inches of thread for each strand that you'll be using. I found that since I have a pretty small wrist, I can kind of cut that down a little bit, but I highly recommend making your first bracelet with the full 36 inches just so you know how much thread you're usually using. But do keep in mind that different bracelet patterns do use different amounts of thread, so 36 is the safest way to go. So I'm going to use this ruler here to measure out 8, 16, 24, 32, and 36 inches of thread. And then here we can take a pair of scissors and cut right here. And then you can use this thread to help measure your additional strands of thread. You'll need 2 36-inch strands of each color. So when you're done cutting, you'll have 4 strands of thread, 2 of each color. That should be 36 inches long, but today I'll be using the ones that are slightly shorter just because I've made this bracelet already and I know how much thread that my wrist usually takes. So now I'm going to organize them to where I have them in alternating color order. This part isn't super important, but it does help make starting your bracelet a little easier if you're able to keep them in order during this part. So now we're going to tie 2 knots here because our bracelet will need to start and end with 2 knots in order to use the S-Clasp to secure our bracelet. So my first knot I'm going to create towards the ends here, towards the tail ends, and you want to try and keep your threads in order, but if they do get out of order, it's not a big deal. So I've got these 4 here. I'm going to tie my first knot. And you can tie this pretty close to the tail ends like this. And then we're going to do this one more time and make a second knot about 1 to 1.5 inches away from this first one. So I'm going to make it right about here. So there's my second knot. And again, if your threads got out of order, it's no big deal because we can always reorganize them for this next step. So now I'm going to take my BFF Maker, and if you aren't using the suction cup to adhere it to a slick surface like glass or a window, you can also use this hook to hook it onto a backpack or any other heavy object so that way this remains stable while you're making your bracelet. So I'm going to adhere mine right about here. And now to add our strands of thread into the BFF Maker, I'm going to insert this into the stopper hole here. And the first knot is going to go all the way through, and then we're going to stop it right before the second knot. So this second knot should be outside of the stopper hole. And I'm going to take the stopper and then secure my bracelet in the center like this. So we have this knot right here sticking out, and then our other knot is out the back of the stopper hole. Now to organize our threads, we want them in alternating order. So I'm going to go green, purple, green, purple. And if you had your threads organized while tying the knots, this part does get a little easier so that way they're not all tangled up, but you do want them to lay as flat as possible. So you don't want your strands to be crossed over if you can help it. And sometimes tugging and rearranging them like this helps. Then I'm going to insert these into the thread holders in this order. And we'll be using this bracelet pattern here on the screen to make our bracelet. You can also find this in your instruction booklet, and I highly recommend keeping this handy. So to read this bracelet pattern, there are a few things to unpack here. Firstly, you'll notice that at the top it says A, B, A, B, which indicates the order in which your color should be. Next, you'll notice that we have these circles with arrows in them, and they indicate what kind of knot that we'll be doing. For this diagonal stripes bracelet, we'll only be using one kind of knot, so that's why you only see the arrows pointing in one direction. These arrows correlate to the arrows here in your instruction booklet, so as you can see, this arrow matches the direction of the one that's in our bracelet pattern today, so we know that we are only going to be using forward knots for this design. For the additional patterns included at the end of your booklet here, you'll notice that there are other kinds of arrows here, which indicate that you'll also be needing to know how to do these other types of knots. For this video, I'll only be showing you how to do this forward knot, just that way we don't get confused with the other types of knots. But stay tuned for future tutorials where I'll show you how to create the other bracelet patterns in this booklet. Each one of these arrows represents a knot. In this case, they all represent a forward knot. You'll notice that we have the numbers 1 through 8 numbered along our pattern. We'll create our knots starting at 1 going down to 8, and once we finish this pattern, then we'll go back to number 1 and keep going down. As you can see, in row 1 we have 2 knots, in row 2 we have 1 knot to make, in row 3 we have 2, and this pattern goes on between 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 down the line of our pattern. You'll also notice that the threads that are initially numbered A, B at the top go down the pattern and show you where they should be located throughout your process. So this is helpful to refer to while you're in the middle of your bracelet to make sure that your threads are in the correct position. This all will make a whole lot more sense once we get started, so we're going to go ahead and jump in now. Firstly, starting at row 1, on the left we have our first knot, and it is a green knot. Keep in mind that we will be creating forward knots for the whole duration of this bracelet, so I'm going to remove my first 2 threads here, because as you can see, the first 2 threads, A and B, are going into that first forward knot, which means we will be using these 2 threads for this knot. Our purple thread will be our weft thread, and our green thread will be our working thread, meaning that our knot is going to be green colored as the arrow indicates. To create our forward knot, our weft thread, which is this purple thread, is going to remain straight, and our working thread is going to make kind of a number 4. And that's how I like to remember how to do the forward knot, is that we create a number 4 type of shape here. The green thread is laid on top of the purple weft thread, and I'm going to reach inside of this hole here, this triangular hole, to grab the tail end of this number 4. So I'm grabbing this green tail end and pulling it through this loop here with my purple weft thread remaining straight, and then I'm going to take my green working thread and secure it upwards like this. We've created the first part of our forward knot, and now to finish off the forward knot, we'll do this one more time. So I'm taking my green thread and creating a number 4 here on top of my purple weft thread, reaching inside of this hole here of the 4 and grabbing the tail end of this green thread. And then I'm going to secure this up again, up to here like that. The last step of our forward knot here is to switch positions of our thread, meaning that this left one here, which was my working thread, is going to go over the right one here, and now we'll replace them back into the thread holders, like that. So all of those steps that we just completed comprise one forward knot. So now we have one done on our pattern, and for row 1 we have our second one to do with the right 2 strands of thread here. So I'm going to remove our right 2 strands here, and we will do the exact same thing as we just did to these 2 threads here. So first I'm going to take my working thread, my green thread, and make a number 4. And then reaching into this hole here, I'm going to pull my tail end of my green through, like that. So we have 1, and we have our second part now that we'll do. So we'll do that one more time. Pull up here. And remember, our last step of our forward knot is to switch thread positions, meaning the green will go over the right. And you'll notice that this green thread often naturally just wants to go over to the right anyways to lay flat. So it's just a helpful reminder when you see your knot kind of twist up like that you need to switch thread positions. Now we can replace them back into the thread holders, and we have completed row 1 of our pattern. If it helps, you can use a tally system with a piece of paper to help you remember what row that you're on of your pattern. And now we're ready to start row 2. So in row 2, you can see that we're only going to do 1 knot, and you can see that the green and purple threads of the center are going into this knot in the center of the pattern, meaning we are going to use the 2 center threads to create this forward knot here for row 2. So I'm going to remove our 2 center threads here, and to create our forward knot, we will create a number 4 shape again with our working thread and our purple weft thread, I'm gonna reach inside this hole here to grab this green tail end, pull upwards to secure, and then we'll do this one more time. I oftentimes hold my thread like this to go a little faster and reach through here. And remember, our last step is to switch thread positions, and you can see that green one naturally kind of wants to go over to the right anyways. So the green one goes over, and now we can replace these into our thread holders like this. And we've now completed the knot in row 2. So moving on to row 3, we have 2 knots again since we just did 1 knot in row 2. And as you can see, our first knot is purple and our second knot is green. For the purple one on the left, you'll see that we have 2 purple threads going into that knot. And on the green one on the right for row 3, we have 2 green threads going into that knot. So this just helps confirm that our threads are placed in the correct positions for this pattern. So to start with our purple one on the left for row 3, I'm going to remove these 2 threads on the left here. I'll create my number 4 type of shape, reach in here to grab this thread, pull up, and then do this one more time. So I have my working thread in my left hand, and I'm going to switch thread positions by moving it from the left over to the right. And now we can replace these into our thread holders. Now for our second knot in row 3, we have our 2 green strands that are making a green forward knot. So I'm going to remove these 2, do the same exact thing, the forward knot like this, reach through this hole to grab the tail end, and pull upwards, and then one more time. So remember that you always do that step twice for each forward knot. And then you'll switch thread positions. So my left working thread here is going to go over to the right like this, and then we'll replace them into our thread holders like that. Now we've completed row 3. For row 4, we have 1 knot again, and the 1 knot will always use the 2 center threads for this pattern. So we're using our 2 center threads, and for row 4, our forward knot will be purple, which is confirmed by our left working thread being purple. The working thread is what will color your knot. So we have this purple thread here. It's our working thread to make our first set of the number 4. Do it one more time to complete the forward knot. And then be sure to switch thread positions by switching this left working thread over onto the right side. And now we'll replace them into our thread holders. Now onto row 5, we have 2 knots again, and our left knot is going to be purple and our right knot is also going to be purple. So just to confirm that my threads are in the correct position, I'm looking at the knots on row 5, and above them you'll see that the threads going into those 2 circular arrows are purple and green, and then purple and green. So that just means that I have my threads in the right positions. So here we're going to make our forward knot by doing that step once, and then a second time, and then switch thread positions, and then on the right side make our forward knot here, and switch thread positions like that. An important thing to remember when you're creating friendship bracelets is that tension that you have on your knots matters to create an even and flat design. I made a lot of friendship bracelets when I was younger, so it's been really exciting to come back to this BFF Maker and Rainbow Loom's new Wrapit Loom to make friendship bracelets. So I have had some years of practice under my belt already. So don't worry if you're not able to get your tension right on the first try of your bracelet. Okay, so now we've completed row 5 and we're moving on to row 6. We have our 2 center threads here to create our 1 knot in row 6, and it's going to be a purple knot as indicated by the arrow, which is also supported by my left working thread being purple. Now I'll switch thread positions before replacing these threads into the thread holder. And as you can see, after row 6, the colors of the thread in order are green, green, purple, purple, which just confirms that my threads are again in the correct position. I refer to this pattern a lot to make sure that my threads are in the right position because this definitely matters as you're creating your bracelet. Otherwise, your pattern will come out incorrectly if your threads are not in the right positions. Okay, now on to row 7, we have a green knot here on our left for our first knot. So I'm making my number 4, pulling the tail end through, making my number 4 again, reaching in through here to grab the tail end and pull this up through here. Now we'll switch thread positions. And make sure that your working thread is always moving from the left over onto the right. Now for the right side, we have our number 4 here. Pull this up, and then I'm creating a second number 4 here, and it's a little harder to visualize with how I hold my thread, but this is what the 4 looks like. Reaching in through the hole to grab my tail, and pulling this up, and switching thread positions, like that. Now our last row for this pattern is row 8, which is these 2 middle threads here. Since we just did 2 knots in row 7, we have 1 knot in row 8, and this will be a green knot, making my number 4. Now I've completed my forward knot. I'm going to switch thread positions by moving the left thread over the right thread and replacing these back into the thread holders. So at this point you should have something like this, and as you continue creating your knots down your bracelet, you'll notice that your bracelet will start to get longer here. When you start reaching a point where your knots are starting to get close to your thread holders, you'll want to remove your stopper. And you can pull on your bracelet here to slide this up, and then replace the stopper onto the stopper hole. So that way you can secure your bracelet and you've made more room to create more knots for your friendship bracelet down here. So now that we've reached row 8, the pattern starts over again at row 1. So your threads, as you can see here, are now an AB pattern again, as they are in the beginning of the pattern for this design, which confirms that we've completed our design correctly. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of this bracelet off camera, just so that way we don't have like an hour-long video. These friendship bracelets are some of my favorites to make while I'm watching a movie, just because it's a fun little activity to do to keep my hands busy while I'm binge watching a show or something. If you're having any trouble with this design, go ahead and start back over to where we start with row 1 during this, since we'll be repeating the exact same steps next. And then I'll meet you back here to show you how to finish off the rest of our friendship bracelet. Alright, so it's been about 20 minutes and I'm already done with my bracelet, mostly because I have a pretty small wrist, so I didn't have to make mine too long. But as you can see, I continued moving my bracelet in through the stopper hole to make room down here while I created my knots, so most of my bracelet is back here now. And once you've completed your bracelet, or you start getting close to where you think you might be finishing up your bracelet, you can remove this portion from the stopper hole, and you can leave these threads in the thread holders here just so that way they stay organized, and measure how long this is along your wrist. So we'll be adding these 2 same knots here onto the other end of our bracelet, so account for another inch to be on the end of your bracelet for when you want to decide whether this is long enough or not. And it's okay if you make it a little bit longer rather than shorter, just because with this S-Clasp here, we can kind of adjust the length of the bracelet. But if you do happen to take this off and it's too short and you're not sure what to do, after you create that first knot, you'll just make your second knot a little bit further away than up here, so that way you have a longer bracelet. So I know that this is about the right size for me now, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove it from my thread holders here like this. I can kind of move this out of the way. So here's my bracelet, and just to confirm that it's the correct length, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this around my wrist. And again, account for an extra inch off of this end of your bracelet here. So I'll be measuring to about here, since that's where our second knot will be later when we create the 2 knots. And this is just about perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and make my 2 knots now. So my first knot is going to go right up against these knots here at the very bottom of my bracelet. So I'm going to wrap this around. So here's this. And it's okay if your bracelet is twisting slightly in which direction. It's just because of the tension in which our knots were made just causes the bracelet to twist a little when it's at rest like this. But once you wear it, I haven't had any issues with it twisting at all. So here is this so far, and now we're going to create our second knot here about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from the tail end. This is when you really want to measure and make sure that you don't make this second knot too close to this first one here, because then your bracelet might not be able to connect if you're making it too close. So it's better to do it a little bit further away to make sure that this fits well. So I'm going to make my second knot about 1 inch away from this first one here. we have 2 knots on each end of the bracelet, and I'm going to go ahead, grab a pair of scissors, and trim the tails. As long as you've secured your knot nice and tight, you don't have to worry about leaving a super long tail. And I'll go ahead and trim the first end of my bracelet as well, just to make those threads all nice and even. And now I'll show you how to add the S-Clasp onto this bracelet so that way you can have a removable friendship bracelet. And it'll be adjustable as well. So I'm going to take one end of my bracelet, doesn't matter which end, as well as an S-Clasp, and I'm going to use this to hook this right here onto the S-Clasp, like that. And I'll show you off of my wrist just because it's a little easier to show you. So here's this first end here, and now I'm going to go ahead and add the other end into the other end of the S-Clasp, like this. And you'll want to do this on your wrist already, so that way it's already on. If this is a little bit big for you on your wrist, you can take one of the tail ends on the S-Clasp here, give it a little tug to tighten, and then wrap this around the S-Clasp to insert it into the other end. So that way you have something like this. Now you have a slightly shortened version of your bracelet, and if you find that this is still a little bit big, you can wrap the other end of the tail onto the other end of the S-Clasp to tighten again, so that you have something like this. And you can continue wrapping those tails around this S-Clasp until you reach your desired size. So let's say this is still too big, I'll grab one of the tails again and wrap this around the S-Clasp again. There really is no right or wrong way to use this S-Clasp, just because it's so versatile. You can use it however you'd like to adjust the size of your bracelet, like that. So depending on how long I've made my previous bracelets, I have my tail ends wrapped around my S-Clasps different times. This one right here I made exactly the right size, so I haven't wrapped any of the tails around here. So it just kind of depends on how you've created your bracelet. And now we have our completed diamond stripe bracelet. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it and that it was helpful to you in using your BFF Maker. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video for more BFF Maker tutorials and subscribe and hit the notifications button to be notified every time we upload a new tutorial. To purchase the BFF Maker, check out the description box below on where you can find it in stores and online. You'll also find our social media sites linked down below as well. And if you post your BFF Maker creations on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, we would love to repost them. So be sure to tag us at this username so that way we can repost them. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you here on Rainbow Loom's channel again here soon. Bye!